Well, hello everybody. Today we're going to do a brisket. We're going to bake a brisket. And this is what it looks like. The type of brisket that you want, I don't know if you'll be able to read that, is a boneless flat cut. A lot of times the grocery store won't have this on hand. Sometimes what you can do is you can call them up or go down there and say, hey, when are you going to get a brisket in? This is what I would like. And what they can do is if they don't have one, they can get it in for you. Sometimes it takes a few days. But in preparing this, and we'll go over this here in just a second, it does have some fat on the bottom, and you cut that away. At least that's the recipe that we have. I know that some people will go ahead and cook it with the fat on, and then when they take it out, the fat, they'll peel it off or they'll trim it off then at that point. In making the brisket, the recipe that we've used for years and years calls for 1 packet of, and we've always used Lipton, didn't have to be Lipton, but an onion soup mix. And then we use ginger ale, we use 8 ounces or 1 cup. And then we'll use about a half a cup of ketchup, and that will go on it. What you see under here is some aluminum foil, and the reason I have that is the brisket will be cooked inside this pouch, and so it will be baked in the oven, and I believe it's at 350 degrees. It takes anywhere from about 2.5 to 3 hours, depending on the size. If you get something that's maybe a smaller one, it could go a little bit less. So if you had the brisket that we have is, for all intents and purposes, about 3 pounds. So that will probably take about 2 hours and 45 minutes or so. If you had one that was a little larger, you're looking at maybe about 3 hours, 3 hours and 15 minutes. A little bit shorter, maybe you're looking anywhere from 2.5 to right around in there. If you had one maybe that was around 2.5 pounds or so. So anyway, what we do is we'll make a pouch out of this, and as it bakes, it will also steam in that mixture, and we'll seal this thing up. I did not have a piece of aluminum foil that was large enough, so what I did is I just joined 2 pieces at the edges, kind of folded them over on each other, and that will help to form a bit of a seal. It's not watertight or completely sealed up or anything, but it is in the pan, and even if some leaks out, it won't be that big a deal. So what we'll do next is we'll go ahead and we'll take our brisket, we'll get it out of here, and we'll trim off the fat, then we'll put it in the pouch, and we'll go ahead and do our get it sealed up and get it in the oven. All right, so our next step is to go ahead and trim the fat. Now, this particular brisket, this cut, came in 2 pieces. And what you can see is this is the fat here that we're going to be trimming off, and then through here. Sometimes the brisket will be just in 1 piece, sometimes it'll be in 2, sometimes it'll have it folded over, but this will still fit into our pan. So what we'll do is we want to trim all of this excess fat. If you wanted to, you could go in and trim some of this stuff off. It just makes it a little chewy. Now, one thing here, if you'll notice that the brisket does have a grain, and when you cut, what you want to do, eventually when you're cutting this up to serve, you don't want to cut with the grain, you want to cut across the grain. And here we see that the grain kind of runs, kind of straight here and kind of curves a little bit here. So I would say that the grain was running this way. So if I was, when I go to cut this, I'm going to cut it here, cut it this way across, so that I'm cutting across that grain. If you cut with the grain, it's not the end of the world. What it tends to do is it tends to kind of fall apart, and you don't get as maybe thin a slice as you would like to get. So we'll move this one back over here, and I'll start trimming off the fat. And again, the reason you might want to trim some of this fat off is it can make it a little chewy. So you may want to go in there and get that trimmed off. So go ahead and you just take your knife, and you can start pretty much wherever you want. This is kind of wanting to lift up a little bit here. So I'll come in and kind of trim that. And this isn't going to be too exciting, so when you trim it, sometimes you are going to get a little bit of the meat that comes away with it, which is fine. And of course, you got a sharp knife, so you want to be very careful. But we'll just get this trimmed up as best we can. And once I'm done trimming this piece and the other piece that's off to the side, I'll go ahead and cut the camera back on, but you get the picture here. Let's see here. So I'll show you on some of these little pieces. And again, you just kind of pick it up with your fingertips and give it a little bit of a trim. So now we've got the fat sort of trimmed off of the brisket, and what we'll do is we'll line our pan here. Put that down so you guys can see a little better. And then we'll just put the brisket in there as best we can. Get that in there so it fits in, as you can see. Let me hold that up a little bit for you. What we'll do next is just pour in the ginger ale. And again, that's 8 ounces. So now we've got our Lipton onion soup mix that we'll put in there. And you just kind of sprinkle it all over on there. And then we'll take our ketchup. Let me get a spoon out here. And we'll just sort of spread that over as best we can. It's not too critical as far as, that you get every bit of it covered. Once it's in the oven and all sealed up, it all cooks well. And of course, once it's sealed up, the packet will go ahead and actually steam. So now that we've got our mixture in there, we'll just go ahead and seal it up. So at this point, we are going to put this in the oven. Again, the temperature is 350, and the cooking time on something like this, for something that weighs almost 3 pounds, will probably be about 2 hours and 45 minutes. That's what I'm going to go ahead and set the timer for. It may even go the full 3 hours. I doubt it though. I think probably 2:45 will be just fine for it. Once you take it out, what we generally like to do is to let it sit for about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and cut it. So let's go ahead and toss this in the oven, and then I'll bring you back when it's ready to come out. I've gone ahead and set the timer for 2 hours and 45 minutes. As far as preparation time, I'd say to trim the fat, depending on how much is on there, takes maybe 10 minutes or so. The rest of the preparation is just opening stuff up and putting it on there, and then you put it in the oven. So in about 2 hours and 45 minutes, we'll take the brisket out, we'll let it sit for another 10, and then we'll go ahead and cut it up. So we'll let this sit for about another 10 minutes, and then what I'll do is I'll start to cut it up. So we've let the brisket sit for about 10-15 minutes or so, and the grain of the meat is running this way on the brisket. So we'll cut it actually this way. So there's that piece kind of cut up, and you can tell it is cooked all the way through. What I'll do is I'll cut up the other piece, plate it up as well, and see how this would taste. That's very good. So that is our approximately 3 pounds of brisket. I think you could easily feed probably 4 or 5 adults a good size portion of those, or you could feed yourself again, and these would be big portions. So if you did a little bit maybe smaller, or even kind of a normal portion, I think you could get quite a few servings out of that. I think this particular cut cost, I want to say basically $24. So we probably had maybe another $1's worth of other food stuff in there maybe. So for about $25, you could get enough meat to, like I said, to feed probably 4 or 5 adults pretty easily. So it's a good way to spend your money, and especially if it's a thing where maybe it's just you. This, like I had said earlier, freezes very well and thaws out very well, and lasts quite a bit of time in the freezer, especially if you can put them in a food saver type pouch or bag. I have a vacuum machine, chamber vacuum machine, and so I'm going to bag up a bunch of this meat and freeze it up, and then it'll last in the freezer for probably 8 months to a year. All right, well, hope you guys got something out of it. Like I said, it's very simple. I'll kind of repeat it again. You just have your brisket, you trim the fat. Once you put it in your roasting pan or whatever you're going to do, put it in. You use 8 ounces of ginger ale. You use a half a cup of ketchup, and you use 1 dry pack of Lipton onion soup mix for this particular recipe. And then you bake it for something about this size. Went for about 2 hours and 45 minutes at 350 degrees in a sealed foil pouch like you saw earlier. So real quick, and we'll end the video here. I was able, as you can see, to get 8 portions, and these would be what I would consider to be normal size portions. So again, for that $24, you would be able to have 8 portions of really good brisket. So anyway, like I said, hope you guys enjoy.